Hey there everybody, it's Nathan Cool with NathanCoolPhoto.com, and in this tutorial I wanted to show you how you can take some very artistic and moody type of headshots using just one single light. Now, some of this may look like a lot of equipment out here, but it's super cheap. There's really not much of investment if you want to take these type of shots, and they can actually be very dramatic, and it's very simple to do. So all that I've got going on here is I've got one of those black and white collapsible backdrops. This is one of those ones that come in a circle and you unfold it. And I've got the black side facing me, and you can see that it probably doesn't look the fanciest, but what's going to happen is all that light's going to get knocked out. I'm going to show you how in just a second. The other piece of cheap equipment that I've got is just a simple white reflector. Now, some people try to use a bed sheet if they're really trying to save some money, but these things really aren't that much, like 20 bucks maybe. I've got a long one here, and I like to do that instead of the circle ones. I can get a little bit more light on the body, but this is very inexpensive, and obviously no batteries required, no cords required. All that we do have to worry about is this light. But before getting to that, talk about this little guy here. Well, that's actually my dummy, and all that it is, so I can focus on myself if I'm taking a self-portrait. If I'm taking a portrait of someone else, this isn't needed. But in this case, I just take a paper and draw some stuff on it, and then I've got a mark that I've placed on the floor, and you might not be able to see it in this video, but there's a little piece of blue tape so I know where I'd be standing. And also this helps when I'm setting up for other people that would be coming in. I can autofocus if I need to there where my mark is, set up all my lights and everything, and then I just go to it. Now, the idea behind the light though in the single light approach is that I'm using an Einstein here. It's got a great color balance to it. So the white balance on this is 5500 Kelvin when I'm shooting in color mode. That allows me to set my camera also to 5500 Kelvin. So everything now is in just manual mode. Don't auto white balance, don't auto focus, don't do anything auto. Setting the shutter speed to 1/160th of a second at ISO 100, and then the aperture at f11 is going to knock out all the background lights, because what I'm going to do is not point this light to me. I'm actually going to feather that light off of me. So if you notice, this light isn't really shining at me, but just the edge of it is going to skirt across me. That gives that nice dramatic view. The more that you tilt the light down, it also can introduce some more shadows. I don't want to show a lot of shadows with the age I am right now. I still want to look as young as possible, so I don't want to do that, and most women especially will not like that at all, so you have to compromise somewhat with that. But the idea is though is that you feather the light off, and you also get the light very close to the subject. So one of the things you might have read about in my book on interior real estate photography, it's the same concept of fall off, and I show a couple portraits in there, but the idea is that light will fall off very quickly. It loses a lot of its power within its very short distance from its source. Then as it weakens very slowly. So there's actually about the same amount of light from here to here, but there's a lot of light right here. In fact, from here to here is about the same amount of light power, but from here to here is where it all is. That's why you want to get that close. If you have that farther away, everything is lit the same. It really doesn't say anything about the shadows. And I always like to say that light shows the subject, but shadows tell their story. So make sure that you add some shadows to that. So once again, ISO 100, we're shooting at 1/160th of a second. And then f11, that knocks it all out. Now the standard shot, if I were to just feather this off me a little bit, I can still get something that looks pretty nice. If I cross my arms and I look at the camera real nice, I can get something that kind of looks like this. I can also feather this off of me even more and get some more shadows, take the light a little bit farther away from me. So if I were to feather it even more, I get a little bit of a more shadowy effect, something that can even be more dramatic. Yeah, that's me being dramatic. Okay, now another trick you can do is turn the light towards you. But anyways, you just look at the light a little bit, you're facing it, and you have to meter for all these instances off the brightest spot. And for me, it's this beacon of my bald head up here. It's going to reflect light like crazy. So you hold your meter right up here and meter it. And this is the other thing you do need to do, is you do need to use a light meter. Now I like to use a Polaris light meter, and it's very simple to use. And I can use a remote in my hand and click those off. So very, very simple technique. Anyways, if I go ahead and I hold this like this, then I get some nice profile shots that look like this. Now, of course, that's a nice profile shot if you're me, and of course, I'm biased toward that. But anyways, that's the idea, is that you can get a variety of different shots. Now, If I had done a profile shot like this, I'm going to light too much of here. Some of that's going to go toward the background. So the idea, once again, you just feather it away. Let most of the light go away and just let the wisps of it cross across the body. Now to edit these and put these together, you want to see what it takes to do that? Let's take this on upstairs, take these raw files and finish this out. You ready? Let's go. Okay, so at this point I've taken all the footage off of the camera. I've got all the raw files now copied over onto my computer, and the editing for this is actually pretty simple. It really is just going to be a matter of really cropping it down, but to really add some punch, I'm going to show you what I do, and also to really make sure we get true colors out of this and the accuracy too. I'm going to take that also into my workflow that I do for portraits, which is a little bit different from real estate photography. I'm just going to touch on it right now, not take a whole lot of time. I'll dedicate more tutorials to the advanced areas of portrait editing. If you'd like to see that, just let me know, leave some comments. Anyways, let's go ahead and edit these out and you can see what I do to make this happen. Ready? Let's go. Alright, so the first thing I do is I've already previewed some of these pictures, and that's why they're labeled here. You can see these 9s. Now this is Capture NXD, and if you've read about this in my other books on real estate photography, you know that I like to use this when colors really count. You know, Lightroom just doesn't do for me a good enough job at the debayering, the interpretation of the raw files, and but it's not that big of a deal. All OEM manufacturers provide their own software to view and then also convert things. So we're going to turn this into a TIFF file. So first thing I did with this one, I liked this one. This is me being dramatic as possible, and I got to admit it was really hard for me to put a scowl on my face, so it's probably not a natural looking scowl. Anyways, over here on the right, you can see in Capture NXD what I did. I went ahead and I did the chromatic aberrations. They allow for lateral and axial. I'll just check them both. Auto distortion control is on, and then also vignette control. After that, you would just right click on it and then just convert the files, which I did. Then I would just bring that file into Photoshop. So cutting to the chase to make this quicker, this is then what we have. Now, excuse me, I like to duplicate a layer first, and that's just Control J. And that way I've got something if I need to go back to it. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to crop this down. Now, I was cropping these at about a 5:7 ratio, so that's really about all I'd need to do. Put myself in here somewhere. Now, you might want to take a look at, using rule of thirds or some other type of composition here. I'm not really too worried about that when it comes to portraits like this. Now, if there was other subject matter, yes, but in this case, really, it's a matter to make sure that, we have something that's dramatic looking. There's a little bit of a rule of thirds here, but I'm not really going to worry about that so much for a picture like this. So anyways, after I crop that down, you can see there's still some problem areas. Here's that light. This is a very common thing. It got really too close to me. So that's an easy fix though. All that you have to do is grab your lasso tool, and then you just grab a lasso around that area, and then all you have to do is content aware fill. So you go up to the edit menu, you'd go down to fill, and then you'd make sure that you have content aware selected. Now that'll go ahead and fill it in. Now one of the things we can do is, since this really did block out the background, we could have probably just used black and that would have been fine. In other words, painting that in or putting perhaps a layer behind it that was black, and then we could have erased some of that with a mask. But now to pump this up, now remember this is just really some basic conversions. I really didn't even sharpen this, but if we go in 100%, for me, this is just sharp enough for a portrait. I could sharpen that up more, and if I wanted to, what I would do is I would duplicate this layer again, and I'd call him SS, and that's for Smart Sharpen, because that's what we're going to do. Going to go up to here to Filter, and then Sharpen, and then Smart Sharpen. Now this is just a preference if you want to do it. We're not going to use the whole thing. You can see that it really brought out my eyes, my gray beard quite a bit, and all the scars that I have on my face. So let's say that we liked that bit of sharpening. We just click OK. Now I'm allowed to do then selective editing since this is a separate layer. So what I can do now is just go Layer, Mask, Hide, take a brush at a 10% flow, similar to like what I would do in real estate editing, and now I'm going to brush on some of that sharpening, like go around my eyes, make my eyes really stand out, maybe a little bit around my goatee area here to really make that show that I've got some age and a story to tell, not try to avoid some of my scars. Got a wild eyebrow hair there, but I'm not going to edit that out right now. I could though if I wanted to. Not a big deal. But anyways, let's get to the real editing here. So I've got a little bit more punch. If I were to really print this out, it would really show a lot. So that's great for the smart sharpening. Now my color tone on my skin is natural, but I want to make myself look a little bit better. It's a very simple adjustment with something like this. I would just go layer, add adjustment layer, and add a hue saturation layer. Now all I'm going to do is up that saturation maybe 10. You can see what it did. It warmed up my skin quite a bit, and that's good. Now a couple things too I could still do. If I wanted to go ahead and lighten up some of the shadows because it really shows me in dark, I could do other things as well. But right now what I want to do is show you how I'd really pump this up, and that would be by turning this into a black and white. So at this point I really like it, and I would export this out, right? And what I would do here is I would go Edit, Convert File, and then since it was originally shot on Nikon using their sRGB, I would use the destination space that I like to use, which is the standard sRGB. And if you remember in my advanced editing book on real estate photography, why I recommend using that. But anyways, I would go ahead and convert it to that and then just save as a JPEG. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in then our black and white. Now what I like to do is I like to keep it in a separate group. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add in a couple adjustment layers. So go to Layer, Adjustment Layer, and then go to Levels. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and darken this up. Don't worry about how it looks right now. It's going to look a little bit odd. All right, there, I pumped that up. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to Layer, Adjustment Layer, Saturation Layer, and then I'm going to go ahead and completely desaturate this. Okay, now what I can do is I can take both of those adjustment layers, I've got them highlighted over here, right click, and then group from layers. What I'm going to do this is call this the BW group, for the black and white group. Now to really add that in there, this allows me, by the way, to just shut it off and on to see what's going on. So now what I'm going to do is add also some brightness. I'm going to go Layer, Adjustment Layer, Brightness, and I'm going to add that into this black and white group. And then I'm going to go ahead and up the brightness some on that, which is good. Now I've got something kind of going on here where I'm a little bit too hot on my head up here. So what I can do is I can go into these individual layers and see where that's coming from. And I'll just take it off the brightness. So what I'll do is I'll take an eraser at 10% flow and then just start erasing this off of my shiny bald head and blend that into the background. So now we've got something that definitely adds a lot more punch to it. Now about these shadows, that is kind of a darkness of shadows right down here. Well, we can do something else to really pump that up. So I can go ahead and grab our layers that we're really working with. Let's go ahead and hide that black and white group, not to confuse it further. I can take what we're doing with Smart Sharpen and our layer here, take both those layers, duplicate them with a Control J, right click, and merge those layers. And I'm going to rename this one Shadow. Now a couple things I can do. Basically I'm going to relieve the shadows in this. So I can go up to Filter, and I can go to Camera Raw Filter, and just as though you were in Lightroom using these tools, I could go ahead and increase the shadows completely. So that basically would knock out any shadows. I could even up the exposure a little bit if I wanted to. But anyways, we'll just do the exposure, the shadows. And you can see there's a difference here. So now I've got a little bit more shadows coming in here. So a couple things I can do here then. I can take this shadow layer and just go Layer, Mask, Hide. And then I can brush in with that 10% flow where I want those shadows. So I'm going to go ahead and put in those shadows back down here in the bottom so it shows that I'm standing there. I'm not just completely in darkness over here on my arm, and that's good. But I can also go into my black and white group and go to my levels layer, and that's what really darkened it up. If I shut off that levels, you can see what happens. So I can go into that layer mask on that layer and also do just a little bit of relief on the shadows, not much like that. And then I can go up here also and see that my head get a little too shiny from that levels layer. I did erase it from the brightness, but it did. So I'm going to take and erase just a little bit off of that as well, right off that shiny spot where the light was coming down. And then to finish that all off, it's just simple. I would go to Edit, Convert to Profile, convert that to sRGB, and then just save it. Save it as a JPEG. And then when we're done, the finished product looks like this. So the editing process is actually really simple. It's more a matter of just cropping it down, but what's going to happen, and you saw in this particular shot, is that the light may all of a sudden get in because you're getting really close to the subject. Well, shooting against a black background or something plain like that makes it very simple to go ahead and just do a content aware fill around the certain corner or clone something in. But anyways, you're going to probably have to cut that out and then edit that. The other thing too is to really make these punchy. That black and white just sometimes just looks a lot more dramatic, but if you desaturate it, it's going to look flat. So what I like to do is I like to add contrast by using a levels layer, and since all these adjustment layers have masks, you can erase some of that as you need to. And of course, adding more layers to say that we're just going to selectively sharpen things, so we just really highlight the eyes. Not everything needs to be sharpened, just the eyes that are looking at you to make it really dramatic. But we want to bring out some shadows, so just make another layer and go ahead and bring out the shadows and just mask that portion of it in, and then eventually you have. Now there's a whole lot of stuff that you can do for portraits, and when I do a variety of the artistic portrait, the fitness work that I do, there's many layers that go into that. And if you're interested, I'll do some follow-ups as well. If you did like this channel though and you want to see some more of these videos, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. It won't cost anything, and as soon as one of these videos is posted, you'll be the first to know. Thanks a lot for watching. Until next time, take care, be safe, and get out there and shoot something.